This week Panasonic has released firmware 2.2 that allows the GH6 to record to a solid-state drive using a USB connection. In this video I want to focus on what I think are three key considerations if you intend to make use of this functionality. The first consideration is, what do I need to make this work? Will any SSD drive that I have already work with the camera, or do I need to buy a new one? Panasonic is providing a list of drives that have been tested, but that doesn't mean that a drive that you already have cannot work with the camera. In this video I'll show you how to test exactly before even connecting the disk to the camera if this is going to work or not. Another key consideration for me are the ergonomics. The drive, as you can see, connects to the USB port of the camera, and this means there are certain things that you can no longer do, so you need to find other ways to operate your camera. In addition, this solution is not fit, in my opinion, to all use cases, so you need to understand if this is really going to add value to you, or you actually may need to ignore all this feature altogether. The final consideration is, how do I make this work with a Mac? I am a Final Cut Pro user and a Mac user since many years, and I was surprised to find out that when I connected the SSD to my computer, Final Cut will not allow me to operate directly from the repository, but will want me to copy the files inside the library, which means I will need to spend huge amount of time to use the media that I produce instead of using it directly from the disk, which I thought was the key advantage of this solution. So later on I will explain what trick you need to do in order to use your SSD drive directly from Final Cut Pro. This is a Sandisk Extreme SSD 2TB that I bought a few years ago. It is not on the list of the drives supported by the GH6. However, it works perfectly with it. In order to find out if your disk is going to work with your GH6, the simplest thing that you can do is to take your drive, connect it through a good cable, the same one you're going to use to connect to the camera. There needs to be at least USB 3.1 Gen 2 to be safe, and run a Blackmagic speed test on your computer. Make sure that you select the SSD drive and start the test. The program will tell you if the disk is able to sustain 2160p at 60 frames per second, which is the maximum speed you can record to the drive. It's the maximum bitrate that is supported by the GH6 on SSD recording. If you see that you have a green tick, that means that your drive is definitely going to work with the camera. So the next step is to actually connect it. In order to operate the drive, you will need a cable that is longer than the one provided with the disk normally. Here, the first thing to do is to connect the cable to the camera. I'm using the Black Mamba small rig cage that I've already reviewed in a previous video. Then get your SSD drive and you place it on this caddy. Again, this is a universal caddy that SMB provides for your cage, and connect the drive. You can then secure the cable to make sure that nothing is moving and everything is tight and ready for operation. With our drive connected, that we know is going to work because we tested previously, we switch on the camera and go into the card file menu, look for the USB SSD entry and set it to on. The camera will take some time to figure out if it can work or not with your drive, because you tested it, you know it will, and then it will give you the recording time, which will depend on the code that you are using to record. In this case, give me 2 hours and 31 minutes because I'm shooting ProRes 5.7K 24p. This drive I've already formatted in the camera. If it's not formatted, the camera will give you a warning and you will need to go into the formatting menu. You cannot format the drive from a computer, you need to do it from the camera. It is a requirement. The second point was about the ergonomics, and you see that I have connected my GH6 with a dummy battery and with a power supply. Unfortunately, because the SSD drive is using the only USB-C connection that the camera has, this means that if you had a power bank solution, like I suggested in one of my earlier videos for your GH6, you can no longer use this to power your camera. the best thing that you can do, in my opinion, is to use a dummy adapter and the power supply, because this setup is not weatherproof and you're only going to really use it when you are indoors. Of course, you can use it outdoors, but mostly you're going to use it indoors. Even if the battery consumption doesn't increase a lot, it does increase. And this means that you will need power. And this power can only really be ensured by having a proper power supply that will deliver the 21 watts that the camera needs. Of course, you can have also a solution for dummy battery that is powered with a battery pack. However, that is again not ideal, and in any case the setup is not weatherproof. So who is going to benefit the most from this upgrade? In my opinion, this is really for those guys that do indoor clips, cinema style clips, not your run and gun shooter, and all those guys that are shooting mostly from a tripod, really on a set of some description. The reason is clear. You don't have any more access to the USB for power. You also need to find a more reliable solution to power the camera, which in my case is a dummy adapter and the power supply. There is additional wiring and additional items and adapters and caddies that you need to add to your rig, which also can be problematic if you have a lot of stuff around your rig. So definitely this is not a solution for everyone. If you are like me, a person that goes frequently out shooting wildlife in harsh condition, maybe it's raining, you definitely don't want to have any of these open. You're not going to carry a monitor, you're going to shoot from the LCD or the viewfinder, and you will record on card, which will give you pretty much the same options, but it would be a much more expensive support and media, and also means that you will need to carry spare batteries with you. But this is part and parcel of doing that kind of outdoor shootings. However, if you are one of those guys who's doing YouTube, vlogs, feature films, all that kind of stuff, and you're really shooting like I am in this case, off a tripod with a nice pan and tilt head, a monitor, and all of that, then this is really an excellent solution, because the storage costs are significantly lower. To give an idea, the Angelbird CF Express Type B card that is cheap, that I use, is around £220, which is a little bit more than the Sandisk Extreme 2TB drive. So you get 4 times the storage for the same price, and this is obviously a benefit. Another benefit is that you can connect directly your SSD drive to your computer and leave the media there for editing. And this comes to the third point of this video, because when I tried to do this on my Mac, it didn't work at all. Final Cut Pro will not allow me to use the media on the disk directly. So I contacted other Panasonic users on Windows, and they told me that they had no problem using this solution. So I scratched my head for a few days, and I finally find this solution, which will allow you to connect your SSD media directly to Final Cut Pro. Import media from Final Cut. You will see that the SSD drive is seen as a camera, and the option leave files in place is not available. What you need to do is to use Finder, close the import dialog in Final Cut, and then simply select all your files and drag them into the event browser. Sometime later, all your files will be available to edit directly from your external media in Final Cut Pro. Okay, so we come to the end of this video, and I want to do a couple of closing remarks. The first one is, I always get questions about what is this part that you have on the cage, what is this, even a cable. So I'm going to put links of pretty much all the parts that are connected on this rig on the video description, so you can see if those are anything that is of interest for you, and potentially get them or get something equivalent. The second part is about discs. So I showed you how to check if discs that you already have work with your camera, is a bulletproof method. Other consideration about the cabling: make sure that your cable is a USB 3.1 Gen 2 to be safe, although to be frank, the bit rate of the camera is 1.9 gigabit per second, so it may as well work with 3.1 Gen 1. However, cables are only a few pounds, so why take a risk? Just get a cable that is robust and will work well with your drive. For what regards the drive themselves, I think a lot of drives on the market, a lot of SSD drives on the market which can write 500 megabit per second are more than enough for using with the GH6, because at the end of the day, you don't even need those speeds. Frankly, the 1.9 gigabit per second is a bit more than 250 megabyte per second, and all disks on the market comply to that specification. So it shouldn't really be an issue to find storage that is cost effective, that will work for you. I prefer disks that are shock resistant and weatherproof, because I use them on both. They cost maybe 10-20 pounds more, or maybe 10% more for the international viewers, but they give me the insurance that, reassurance that the disc will work in any kind of conditions and is rugged, and if it falls on the floor it doesn't break. However, if you are in a more controlled environment, you can easily get a Samsung T5 if you find it, because I think going out of production, or a T7, which are not weatherproof and shock resistant, but will work absolutely fine with this camera and are actually a little bit smaller to carry around. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please let me know. If you have any comments, any questions, leave it on the video. I always come back to any questions that are raised from you viewers. Take care and have a great day.